coming to a very, very important phase of India and our response to the parliament attack was Operation Parakram. Now, this, again, for people who may not know, was a massive troop mobilization. And I would say the bluntest, most, criticism-filled chapter in General Vij's book is on Op Parakram. And I'm going to read out 2 or 3 sentences from this chapter. He says that there was a complete lack of clarity in the cabinet at that time on war objectives. Please let's remind our audience that more troops died in Operation Parakram when India never went to war than died in the Kargil war. The leadership dithered and delayed, opportunities were frittered away. Now, you may ask, how did our men die? They died in very much in the line of duty in the laying of mines and the demining of mines. And at one point in the book, General Vij, you speak about how faulty fuses. And, actually, when I was reading this, I was feeling so upset and agitated that, look at how some of these young lives had to go from faulty fuses in what you call obsolete mines. This at a time when the army was ready, I'm quoting you, for an all-out war. And the part of the army plan was to capture parts of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. I don't think this has ever come out so specifically that the government asks for the mobilization. The military mobilization is done on orders of the government. The army at that time draws up a blueprint and says, we're ready for an all-out war. We're ready to take back parts of PoK. And nothing happens. There is no war. And yet we lose more men than we lost in the Kargil war. I'll start with you, General Vij, on Op Parakram, and then take it to General Hasnain and Shukla. General Vij, please go ahead.
You see, Barkha, when we were deployed, as a matter of fact, I must go back to the story of Mr. Vajpayee that evening calling all the 3 chiefs for a meeting after the parliament was attacked. So General Padmanabhan was that day away from Delhi. So I, as the Vice Chief, attended the meeting, and Mr. Vajpayee, the Prime Minister, asked as to how much time will we take to deploy and teach Pakistan a lesson. And of course, we gave the timing as per what our existing doctrines were. And Air Force and Navy, of course, for 4 hours to 24 hours to 36 hours. And I said that a holding force will be deployed in the 36 hours and will be ready for the operation. But our strike force, which are deployed in the hinterland, will take time, and that will be up to 3 weeks. And that is our problem, that we cannot start our operation immediately because that will create an imbalance. But the fact is, the way the Prime Minister was serious, and Mr. Brijesh Mishra was also there at that time, and there was nobody else for that meeting except 3 of us and him. And when we came out, I clearly remember a Chief Marshal Tipnis telling me, he said, look, this is the first time the government is pushing us. Otherwise, generally, it's the army which is pushing the government to start something. Anyway, we deployed, and on 13th, the meeting was held, CCS meeting. And when the chiefs asked the government as to what is our aim and objective, the reply given was that you deploy first and your objectives will be told to you. Now, that itself created a bit of a doubt in the mind. And after a few days, you started hearing the NSA talking to the DGMO mostly that time and telling him what is happening. Tell quickly, because Condoleezza Rice, used to call it Condi, is pushing us. There's a lot of pressure from them. So that gave us a fair idea as to the government is now in a double bind because there's an international pressure on them. It carried on like this. But what is very sad is that even the second time when Kaluchak was attacked, Kaluchak camp was attacked, and we lost about 24 odd families.
And lots of and many small children, because I remember reporting that I remember being in Kaluchak when that terror attack happened.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. And it's very sad that the children was killed, families were killed, and even that did not push us. That was very sad, because it was all right. There was international pressure, but after all this happened and after Kaluchak happened, I think we should have gone in and taught Pakistan a lesson. And we were in a position with all our problems of equipment and other things. We are still far too good for Pakistan to accept it. But this is how it is, the story.
Let me open this up. General Hasnain, Parakram outside of military circles remains an undertold story. And that is why this is a very important chapter. And it speaks to many things. It speaks to how much say does the military leadership have in ultimate decision making. It speaks to, sending men and women to war is one thing, but to mobilize them and not have a direction is quite another thing. And General Vij contrasts it with Kargil. You may not agree that with the instruction not to cross the line of control, but there was a clear instruction. There was a clear position. Here there was no position. It was mobilized, baad mein dekhenge. And it proved to be very costly. What are the, how do you look back at Parakram?
See, Barkha, I take your mind back to 1971. 23rd of March, Operation Searchlight in Dhaka, what was happening, and the meeting which took place with Mrs. Gandhi and her cabinet committee for security with the field marshal at that time. Yeah. And exactly the reverse happened, where everyone said, "What does the army go in now?" And the field marshal said, "No, hold your horses. I've been telling you all this time. Give me ammunition, give me my equipment, give me the tanks you have not given me. Now I need time to prepare to give you a guarantee." And then he gave all the terrain considerations, the weather and the climatic conditions, and asked for 9 months. Here was a completely different situation. We had won 1971. Now we were 30 years later. We were in a position where the Indian Army had progressed far beyond. Why the Indian Army? The Indian Armed Forces had progressed far beyond. We can never be found to be waiting for the perfect situation to actually launch ourselves. The army can't say, when I have 40 days of intense rates ammunition, only that day I will go. No, these are things which keep building up from time to time. And General Vij very correctly says, I think we have the confidence. In 1999, General Malik had declared at one stage, we will fight with what we have. Here also, we could have fought with what we had, and we were in a far better position than what Pakistan was. But I think to an extent, what has not been spoken by General Vij also, the nuclear overhang was perhaps still playing on the minds of the political leadership. And it was now almost 3.5 years since the detonation of the nuclear devices. In 3.5 years, we have not really come to a nuclear policy, a doctrine, a clarified nuclear doctrine. So that overhang was still perhaps there. The other thing was the military leadership, perhaps, in explaining that our strike elements were still far behind. 21 Corps, the Corps I commanded, the Corps which General Vij commanded, would have taken 9 to 10 days to reach his battle areas. That is considered to be excessive, but then we had the pivot corps, we had the necessary resources, and things would have fetched up, and as they fetched up, they would have gone into battle. Right? So I don't foresee anything negative. At the worst, what could have happened was a stalemate. Right? But in this situation, we had to get a moral dominance that we failed to get. Somehow, we just failed to get. Yeah. And this has not been adequately explained to the public. No one has really written on this adequately to explain to the public why didn't the army go. And I think the army actually had a setback to its reputation because of that.
Yeah, and that's a very important point that you make, that the army had a setback to its reputation. And that's why this chapter on Parakram is particularly important in this book, Memoirs of General Vij. General Shukla, please come in on Parakram, because it will lead us very naturally into Cold Start. And we'll come to that right after your take on Parakram.
So see, the lessons from Parakram lie in certain aspects which have been brought out by General Vij in the book. Let's say what Prime Minister Vajpayee had to say in Parakram. He first tells General Padmanabhan, "Aap chaliye, hum batayenge." When General Padmanabhan asks him to spell out the military mission, means mobilize and we will tell you. And later on, General Vij quotes the Prime Minister, Mr. Vajpayee, in his book, when he publicly articulates a regret that he did not give orders for attacking after December, and particularly after Kaluchak. Now, this dressing up of coercive diplomacy, I think was the handiwork of Mr. Jaswant Singh. He may not have meant ill, but the point was that, the military will mobilize, and the intention was never really to attack. It was a political face saver. And what happens now, this is the lesson that we have to learn. When your coercion is not credible, when your deterrence signals are not credible, who picks them up? The adversary military. They are sharp enough to pick it up. And so they not only knew that you were not serious about attacking, they dared to do Kalu check. Now, this is the point, that force and diplomacy must be calibrated in our statecraft. Has that got better? Yes. Is it good enough? No. What we must do on a collective annual basis is war game, MEA and MOT together, national security contingencies, and come up with conjoint, shall we say, plans. Because, diplomacy will only work if there is military leverage. This is something which needs to be done. And one more point, if I can make, the principal lesson from Parakram is that we will come to cold start, that we were still reacting to change. I mean, in Parakram, we discover that we are not operationally poised to execute things as well we could, and that leads to cold start. What should we do now in the China context? In the China context, I think we need to carefully war game the parameters of strategic deterrence. Where are we in terms of unmanned long-range precision? Look at what's happening all over the world, missiles, drones. Where are we in terms of AD upgrades? Or else, like in Parakram, we will either not radiate strong enough deterrence signatures, or we will end up fighting for the last war. So these are the actual lessons to be learned both from Parakram and Cold Start.